Cool. I like that. Quick show of hands if you've ever been out on a date before. All right, most of you. A couple in the back, not sure. Okay, that's all right. I want you to go back to the first date in your life, and I want you to think about how it came about. For some of us, it was really simple. You would pass a note to that boy or girl in class, or maybe you'd get up the nerve to ask somebody out in the hallway. And you guys you okay? We good? Okay. That's totally cool. No, I just want, because if you had dating, because right here, Corey, he knows stuff. I'm sorry, Cody. Cody knows stuff if you need any info.
He is married.
Yeah, but he still knows stuff. Just saying. So go back to that first date and think about how it came about. There's a lot of different ways. Obviously, if you had the nerve to ask that special boy or girl out in class, that was great. You could pass a note. And depending on what generation you were, that was about the only ways you could do it. But today, obviously, with the internet and with cell phones, you can take your phone, and it's really easy to text somebody. You can get on any number of dating sites, which is wonderful. And if you're like me, you did it the old-fashioned way, right? It was kind of for those of you who don't know what that is. By the way, first of all, where are my millennials in this room? Let me see the millennials. Yeah, you'll know. Yeah, you're there. Yeah. Where are my baby boomers? Yeah. Where are my Gen Xers? All right. We're going to be flying Gen Xers and millennials flags high today. You'll see why. So anyway, that is a wall-mounted phone. For some of you who have never seen one before. And the way it works is really simple. You would pick up the phone and you would dial a number. So my first date came about with Julie. And I'm sitting at home with my mom and dad, my brother and sister, and we're having dinner. And I finally got up the nerve to call Julie on the phone. So I picked up the phone, and with these wall-mounted phones, by the way, you should know, it is not like the cell phone. So you see, that's how far you go. So the cord goes that far, and then you can stretch it about this far, and that's as far as you got. And I got Julie on the phone, and I asked her if she'd like to go out to a movie on Saturday, and she said, that'd be great. And before I could hang up, my brother, who's 4 years older than I am, yelled out, "Scotty's in love with you," before I hung up the phone, which really, really didn't help much. But I would get him back at a later date, which is another story. But the different generations have gone through a whole bunch of inventions and ways of doing things better. Now, before we go on, quick show of hands, if you've ever been out on a date from hell. Come on, Cool, yeah, there's a bunch of you. All right, real quick. Now, this is where the rubber meets the road. Raise your hand if you were that date from hell, like I was. No one? Ah, all right. Well, I'll believe that, but So, quick story. I got up again, the nerve to ask out Angie, and Angie and I went out to dinner, and I'm really, really psyched, and we're having dinner, and I thought things were going absolutely smashing. I was really, really happy, and about 20 minutes into dinner, Angie looks at me, and she just goes, "Scott, this is not working out. I just want to go home." And I was like, "Well, what's going on? I'm having a great time." She said, "Look, you're not a real good conversationalist. You don't own a car, and I don't even know who's paying for dinner." And I said, "Angie, we're 13 years old. What am I supposed to do?" So I go, and we pay the bill. I paid it, and I put a dime in the phone, right? Because there was a pay phone. That was how I communicated back then. There were no cell phones. Called my mom, asked her to come pick us up. Who does she send to pick me up? My brother. Needless to say, I wish we would have walked that day. But anyway, my brother picked me up, and he had some fun things to say once he dropped Angie off. Let's talk about the generations and managing not only the talent that you work with, but the people that you work with, the men and women, the kids, the grandparents, the aunts and uncles who depend on you for better nutrition, for better education. We're going to define who they are. We're also going to define some of the wants and needs and desires they have. And this extends to the workplace, but it also goes into other areas as well. And characteristics. Ooh, there we go. And their characteristics. I will talk softer now. We're also going to say, we're going to talk about why each generation is important, so I won't forget anybody here. But first of all, I can tell some of you aren't exactly sure where you fit in and where the people you work with and you help fit in. So we're going to talk about some of those folks. But before we go on, I want you to know that generations are connected. So all of us in this room are connected generationally. We come from different generations, but what's really cool when you think about it is life affected us in different ways. I am a baby boomer. I know I look like a millennial, but I'm a baby boomer anyway. So think about it. And once upon a time, these were computers. Again, that's not as powerful as your cell phone. But that was a whole office floor, and I want you to think of that as the first real big generation of computers, filled up an entire office floor, and that system is pretty much like the silent generation, the veteran generation, and then they built on that. Women and men with lots of talent, and they took it and they were able to actually take computers and shrink it down to one office, which was really cool. Things were getting smaller, things were getting better. Think of this as baby boomers. We had computers, not much was happening yet, but all of a sudden, things started to change. And anybody remember their first desktop, by the way? Okay, for those of you who are a little bit more advanced, this is kind of crazy, but this is the way it worked. So there was no email, and if you wanted to communicate, you either picked up the phone or you ran to talk to somebody else, and then if you had information you wanted to give them, well, you would take this little floppy disk thing and you'd put it in there, and then you would press the press button to print it, and you would hope to God that it was going to actually print, and then you'd run, and you'd give it to the person you wanted to give it to. Then she or he would put it in their computer, and they'd press, and hopefully the files that you saved were there. Sometimes they weren't. And then also, which is kind of weird, they had different colors too. The keyboards would be one color. Sometimes they would hodgepodge and put them together, but usually they worked. This is kind of Gen X. Now, I'm not comparing Gen X to the computer, except for this is the next generation. Okay. Anybody ever feel like this when they got their first laptop? Because I did. I would sit there and I'd be thinking to myself, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to not touch? What happens if I press that button? And of course, back in the day, and they're still here today because you know them, they're these men and women who kind of walk in like the sheriff, the IT people, when you have an issue with your computer, you know, and they make you feel about, I don't know, you're right about that big, right? And you wonder to yourself, okay, what did I do? And hopefully if they're cool, they help you out. But I have definitely felt like my buddy Chimpy over here before. And then all of a sudden, things got really cool. Millennials grew up with this. We've got these computers now that aren't the size of an entire office or floor or one office. We can actually take this computer anywhere we want and have a lot of fun with it. And then they didn't stop. Whoever they are, they know a lot. They came up with the right phones at the right time, and all of a sudden we had these cellular devices that they told us would be able to do everything. So imagine not so long ago when they said, you're going to be able to do so much more on your cell phone than just talk. What else did you need to do? Well, you're going to be able to get information. I don't need information. You're going to be able to communicate in different ways. I don't need to communicate in different ways. Apparently we do. And how about the fact that you can take your cell phone, press a couple buttons, and within 24 to 48 hours, that great little package that you want is waiting for you at your door? Technology, baby boomers. This is the latest, and now it's getting even more. The challenge for you in nutrition, I wanted to let you know too, by the way, nutrition's pretty important to me. I'm a runner, I practice yoga, and I have a cousin, June, who is, bless her heart, she's tried to mentor me in nutrition. She's a registered dietitian, nutritionist for over 30 years, and she tries to always make sure that I'm eating healthy. And God forbid I fall off the wagon a little bit, or I have a bagel or a donut, and it's like, whoa, what'd you do? I'm like, well, I had some fruit today too. Yeah, but that doesn't balance. Oh, okay, whatever. Anyway, the challenges that you have in your life dealing with nutrition and dealing with people who may not have the benefit or the knowledge that you have is important. And I think that some of this is really going to hold true to you. You know, you think about having to do more with less. I know that in different conferences I speak at with nutritionists, with school nutritionists, and anyone else. By the way, these slides, I'm going to make every one of them available, and there's a way we can connect later. So if you don't want to write everything down, you don't have to. If you want to just text a friend or go on Blab or whatever, have fun. But I will have all these things available for you. So write them down if you want. Otherwise, they'll be there. Overworked yet dedicated. I've never spoke to anybody who has anything to do with nutrition who isn't a little bit overworked. You're doing a lot. There's a lot of people you're trying to help. Money isn't always there. Budgets are cut, and it's difficult. So you have challenges, but I want you to know and understand as you do, while you're not the highest paid people in the country, what you do matters a ton. You don't only literally help people's lives, but you make them better. And not everybody can say that. Underappreciated yet determined. I've spoken to thousands of people who are nutritionists, and they're always telling me the same thing. What we do matters, but a lot of people don't get what we do. And that's okay. Sometimes we're going to be underappreciated, but if you're determined and you continue moving forward, a lot of times you'll find out that you'll be able to bridge things and make a big difference, especially when you have that person once in a while who thanks you. And they go, thank you for teaching me about this. Thank you for helping me help my family eat healthier or make better decisions that won't hurt us. I mean, you can actually save lives too. In budget cuts, I touched on that just a bit. It's a huge deal. And we all understand that we're always under budget cuts. Sometimes when you're working for an association, a business, or a company, they're always trying to get things leaner. And today, there's 2 people often doing the jobs that one person used to do. Sometimes 3 people maybe, 4. There's a lot. And you understand that it can be pretty difficult. We're going to talk about the generations now. I put 5 generations up there because there's a new generation that just entered the workforce. I want you to know about them. I want you to know a little bit about them because when you connect with them, not just at work, but these young men and women from 2 to 20 years old, Generation Z, that we're going to talk about in a little while, not only do they have a ton of passion, but they need your help. They need your guidance. And they're some of the people that you directly affect. So we need to understand some of the different cultures. That's quite obvious. And we also need to make that connection with people. Sometimes people aren't going to take your advice when it comes to nutrition or anything else unless they know that they can trust you and you have their best interests in mind. By the way, this session is usually 3 hours. They didn't quite give me that much time. So we can ask questions anytime. We're just going to fire away today. So if you have a thought or a question, just fire away, and we'll stop, and we'll take care of that. Some of the people that you connect with are there. You can read that. And then, most importantly, who are these folks? So this is where the generations fit in. And you can, without asking anymore, you can figure out where you fit in and where people who you work with fit in. Now, there's the boomers, the veterans, the silent traditionalists, Gen X, and the millennials. We're going to get into why the millennials are so important in a minute. I have 2 kids that are millennials. They will tell me that they've always been important, and who might argue, right? I want to tell you a little bit about each one of these groups. I want you to understand. Now, I printed out these slides for you because I thought that these were the ones that would be most important. It would give you some information about the folks that you work with, how to connect with them, what their needs, wants, and desires are, and really how to bridge the generations a little bit. So let's start out with the veterans, the traditionalists. These folks are still in the workplace, but there's not a lot of them anymore. Now that 2% number is still millions of people. So these are women and men that have either chosen to be in the workforce or need to be in the workforce. And what's great about that is they bring with them a wealth of knowledge. And many of them are still willing to learn, too. A lot of people still want to learn. It never ends, you can tell. Here's who they are. We pretty much know that they're rule followers. You didn't ask questions, you just did what you needed to do. Their ages are 71 to 78, and they really like to communicate face-to-face. Something to consider. If you have a client, if you're working with somebody, and they're of this generation, you got to make sure they really understand and get into email. Some of them totally do, but don't want to do it. So you're going to have to figure out some other way. I'd prefer if you just left me a voicemail at home on my landline that I still have, and you're going, oh, you have a landline, that's cool. Discipline. They're extremely disciplined. These are the kind of folks that if you tell them what you want, they will get it done, and they won't leave until it's done. You might have to just tell them, scoot. Baby boomers. These guys, me, the reason the word workaholic is in our vocabulary is because of boomers. We're the ones who were the first generation, because of the generation before us, that could do anything we wanted. We could make a whole bunch of money. We could have 2 cars and a house, maybe more if we chose. We could work really hard, and a lot of people did. And we got fulfillment from work. Now, I want you to understand that these are all generalizations. So not everything in here is going to be the same for everyone. Plus, whatever generation you are, you're really kind of 2 generations. So if you're a boomer, you're probably a boomer and an Xer. Unless you're an older boomer, it might be boomer and veteran, depending. But a lot of people, and millennials can go millennial and Xers. It just depends on your age. So sometimes you're going to be 1 generation, but you really relate really well with 2. 29% of the workforce. That has changed. Every year that I do this presentation, I have to tweak a lot of things because of information and things I read and books and articles, but the number keeps on going down because of the silver tsunami. So my generation is starting to retire, the older baby boomers. And we'll get into that a little bit more. Their leadership is more cordial. So when you're talking with folks and you have a feeling that they may be a boomer, and you're talking about nutrition and diet, they're going to be more apt to be open with you and listen. They're going to ask questions. And the communication is still face-to-face. How many of you have a staff or people that you work with? Anyone? Some of you do, and some of you work solo. Okay, I got that. And by the way, boomers, we're good with technology. We're not great, but that's okay. We've got other people who can help us, like our kids and Xers. Baby boomers, a lot of them didn't save enough money, or things happened with the economy, so they're working because they have to now. The older ones, some of them are working because they want to. But if they continue to work and they've retired, they get hired as contract workers quite a bit from the state, federal, and companies will hire them for part-time work because there's a lot of great talent. And Generation X, we're going to talk about them in a moment and why they're the sandwich generation, what that really means, but why they're incredibly powerful. And millions of people still need the money. By the way, this number, it's still true today. 10,000 boomers every single day are retiring. What does that mean to you? It means that the people that you're talking to are going to be retiring more and more. Boomers, it means that Gen X is going to be even more in charge. It means that millennials are going to continue to rise and they're going to continue to be in power, big time. So every day, over 3,600,000 a year are retiring. That's a huge number. Gen X. These guys rock. And the reason they do is for several. First of all, they're the smallest generation we have right now in numbers. There were just less of them born, so you're going to be dealing and talking to a lot of Gen Xers that have kids, but not as many Gen Xers in general because there's just not as many. When it comes to I talked about them being a sandwich generation. They're squished between boomers and millennials, and there's less of them. Lots of boomers, lots of millennials. Plus, Gen Xers are also squished in another way. They've got aging parents and kids, and they're in the middle trying to take care of all that. And that's a really tough job sometimes. So when you're working with and associating with Gen X, they've got a lot going on. They're also in charge. The country right now is run by Gen X and boomers. Millennials are making a huge step, obviously in Facebook and things, but in getting into more managerial positions and so forth. But Generation X, I want to just give you a little bit about them. It's on the sheet, but there's a couple of things I want to point out. This is the first generation that became really more independent and would follow fewer rules, and I love that about them because I've always kind of questioned authority, and it wasn't very popular in my house when I was growing up, but I did it anyway. Anyway, fewer rules is one of the things that they do, but it's not because they don't want to follow the rules. They ask questions. They want to know why things have to be done this way. Why can't we do it this way? So they look at it from different perspectives, which is actually great. That's how we make a lot of changes that are positive, and that's how we continue to grow. Their leadership style is more open, equal. They balance family and work. This is the first generation that started going, wait a minute. Work is great, but it is not everything. I'm not going to be a workaholic. I'm going to have some fun, too. Small in comparison, as we talked about. And here's your age. So if you're about 36 to 51, you're pretty likely an Xer. 34% of the workforce, what does that mean? It means that they have now passed up baby boomers as the second most employed workforce. And high tech, we all know that they're really good with that. Really good with high tech. All right, I'd like to take a minute before we go on. I'd like you to turn to the person next to you, and if there's 3 of you, that's fine, and if you're one, just turn around. And I want you to talk about a moment, either something you're doing in work or something you're doing with clients that's helping generationally. What are you doing that's making a difference or that's allowing you to work with different generations a little smoother? And we're going to talk about that when we're done. When you guys are done, it's going to be about 2 minutes, okay? Ready? Go. Okay. All right. Let's keep the party moving. Would anybody like to share a best practice or something they're doing or that they learned that's helping with generations in the workplace or how they work with them? Anybody have any thoughts? Something you heard that was cool? Yeah.
Communication with them.
Yes.
How the older generations, it works a lot better to give them actual handouts to play dates of classes, whereas the younger ones, emails and text messages seem to be definitely how to communicate with them, whereas the paper is going to be lost in the world of...
You're right, and those handouts are often the things that are going to go to people who still like to get their newspaper at home or whatever. They're used to having the hard copy, which is totally cool. When they asked me, they said, can you give us, if we want to have handouts, I'm like, why do we need handouts? She goes, some people like to write. I was kidding with them, by the way. But you're right, the communication is different, not just with paper, but also with phones too, right? And how some people you really can't text because they're going to be like, what? Just call me if you need me, right? What else do you have? Yes. Yes.
They don't like to talk, and they don't like to answer questions. And being a baby boomer, I have a million questions. My daughter calls me the Grand Inquisitor. But
we at home we call it.
I go to teach
Yeah.
some millennials,
Yeah.
they say, okay, and they're just ready to, with your computers, to take notes or whatever, and not talk. And I'll say, close those computers up. What's your name?
Yeah.
What do you do? What do you like? It's very uncomfortable for them.
It's interesting because that's a great point. It's one of our challenges now. When you've got all these different generations in the workplace and all these different clients from different generations and patients and people that you work with, there's different ways that we have to communicate. Now, one of the things with studies that they're showing now is millennials and even Generation Z and folks that are in college, they don't learn as well if they are on their computer. Statistics show that your brain soaks in more if you write. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to stop. They're going to type away. However, there is some cognitive effect to how you process and save that information. So that's a great point. And everybody's going to do it different, but I like the fact that you try to mix it up with them a little bit and go, hey, let's just talk. Let's turn off the computers for a minute. Let's get rid of all that. Yes. Oh, well, that. Just don't ask them to power it off, because that would be. I couldn't do that either, though. So what am I talking about? Anybody else have any ways that they're working with or challenges? Are you having any challenges? Wow, this is a good group. Okay, Gen X, real quick. One other thing is they like to communicate directly. These folks look you right in the eye. They want to know what's going on. Tell them what they need and leave them alone. Or if you're seriously, if you're dealing with a client or somebody, tell them what's happening. Let them go on. If they've got questions, they'll ask. Now, Millennials, we're going to dive into them a little bit because there's a ton of them, and Gen X is phenomenal, as I mentioned. They're leading in so many ways in this country right now. But these guys, they're the #1 generation in the workforce, and they're the #1 generation in America. So if you're a millennial, you're already giving yourself a pat on the back. I know that, because that's how millennials work, and it's perfect. It should be that way. I told you I've got 2 of them. All right. I used to put, by the way, we'll start there, 35%. So you're #1 in the workforce. You're also #1 generation in America. There's over 83.5 million millennials. That's a lot of people, even more than boomers. So the good at multitasking, I used to put great, but the more I read, because I would look at them and wow, millennials were just crazy fast and passionate, and they could do all these things, but the more I read, the more I learned that statistically, I was wrong. They're good at multitasking, but they really can't be great because our brains aren't wired that way. So anybody, whether you're a millennial or not, who tries to do more than 2 things at the same time, your proficiency rate is going to go down, period. Now, once in a while, there's something going on where you can get a little bit more done, but you need to know, we should know, that if you're working with millennials or if you're managing them and you see them trying to do too much at once, maybe focus on a few things, get those done, and then move on. That's not easy, but it's a fact. Number 2, and that's not just in warm weather, it's everywhere. Millennials would like to dress casually, and they would love to wear flip-flops in the winter if they could. Not everyone, but a lot, especially, anyway, I won't get into that. Very entrepreneurial and creative. They have started some of the companies we use today. They love the thought of working for themselves or having a team, and that's great because all that's going to do is either get them into a company or a business where they'll be a great fit, or keep them in their company that they started, which will employ other people and do wonderful things for folks. So very, very entrepreneurial. Uncommitted to jobs and careers. Not all of them, right? We know all of them aren't. Does anybody have any issues with millennials not being committed to jobs and careers? Nobody's going to admit that in this room, are they, right now, huh? You have trouble. What do you have?
They just all either get higher than they're leaving.
Where are they going when they're leaving? Bigger and better? Better than working with you?
Course of study, certificates, and higher on that sort of thing.
Okay. Yes, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that it's usually moving on to something else, not that we don't give work to, maybe I should speak for all millennials.
Yeah.
But
No, you should.
For the work jobs or careers, but what was the other one that was up there? Work hours, only the required hours, a little more, and I think.
Oh, I haven't gotten there yet. No, I'm kidding.
For praise, and I think if we don't get that praise and that support, then it's like, well, the value isn't as strong, so we can move somewhere where we do get that.
That's very well said. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in depth. I'm going to focus a little bit more on millennials. And one of the reasons they're going to do that is because a few, I was still doing it, and people were almost upset. Why are you talking about millennials? I said, because you need to understand how important they are. Well, we don't think, and all of a sudden people started to realize, oh my gosh, there's a lot of them. We better get to know them. And some of them got on the bandwagon a little late. But you're absolutely correct. Uncommitted to jobs and careers, there's a reason for that. The reason is they're not sure exactly what they want to do, and they're okay with that. They've also seen their parents, their aunts, their uncles, and other people that they care about lose their jobs after 20 and 30 years. And they say, well, wait a minute. Why am I going to dedicate myself to all this if I'm not even going to be taken care of? So they know that, they see that, they remember that, and they're not kids anymore. They're adults. We know how millennials communicate, email and text, voicemail. If it's at work and you do company voicemail, they're okay with that. They work only the required number of hours, a little more. Now, that's true unless you're in certain jobs, but there's a reason for that too. Millennials understand, better than any other generation so far, that it's really not just about work. Their family are their friends. Yes, they've got their family and they love their family, but their friends, their close friends, that's their family. They want to spend time with them. They want to do things outside of work. That doesn't make them any better or any worse than any of us. It makes them millennials. That's what they do, and that's cool, but you have to understand that, and you have to wrap your mind around it, because if we don't, that's when the friction begins, because you're going to go, well, why isn't it like this? Why aren't you like that? You know what? Because I'm not. I don't have to be like you. Prefer direct communication, feedback, and praise. Millennials were raised by boomers, mostly boomers, that pretty much anything they did was okay, as long as it was legal. And everybody got a trophy, even if you came in 8th place. You were good, you were good, you were good, and all that. And that was our fault, but it wasn't our fault. That's how we raised them, because we wanted them to know that we loved them dearly, they truly mattered, and they were good because we wanted them to be strong and have a great foundation. So today, these kids who aren't kids anymore, who are now young adults and not so young adults, because 36, right, down to 16, these folks still have that at the core of who they are. So feedback and praise that you mentioned is very important. Everybody wants a paycheck, and nobody has any issue with getting a little bonus if that's around. And of course, we talked that those aren't around as much as they used to be, but and hopefully that'll come back. But the feedback and praise are important. And the feedback to a millennial, and millennials, correct me if I'm wrong, short, sweet, and simple, right? Do not be a professor about it. Do not dictate a half-hour conversation with them. Just short, sweet, and simple, and move on. And praise, if you give anyone an attagirl or an attaboy, we kind of like that. And if you give a millennial the same thing, they really appreciate it too. They're no different because, well, they were brought up that way, and they appreciate it. We told them, you matter, you rock. So now when they're at work, they want to know that they matter and they rock. If they don't know that, if they don't hear that, that could be enough for them to go, Oh, by the way, within 30 days, if you hire somebody, they know if they're staying or not, statistically. And I won't hit you with many more statistics. But when you hire a new employee, within 30 days, she or he knows pretty much if they're going to be hanging out or if they're going to start looking. So that's how much time you have to make an impression. Remember how it used to be, some of us will remember, it was our job to impress them, right? Our management, our boss, and all that. Well, it's flipped a little bit. It's kind of a two-way street now. It's more equal. Any questions? I'm throwing a lot at you. I'm sorry, none from the back row. You guys are done. Anyway, no, I'm kidding. Yes? The best answer for me, possibly. What's your answer?
I think because there are so many of us, it makes it kind of a more
the debt is terrible, and I won't get into the political parts, but I think it does stink that people who go to higher education have so much debt. One of the ways that millennials are dealing with that today is they're working pretty hard because they have to, but not necessarily because they want to. Some of them will put in extra hours if they can get paid more so that they can pay off, strictly so they can pay it off. It isn't even so much to go out and eat more or to go shopping or to do this and that. They have 10, 20, 30, 40, massive amounts of debt in their eyes, and it'll get paid off. But when you're a millennial, you don't think about that. You're just looking at that chunk of change that you own. You're like, so it's not easy. That one aspect frightens millennials. That's something that they knew about going in when they got the loans, but once you start getting the payments and you have to pay them every month, that's when you realize that you have to work. You got to work probably more hours than you're going to want to, sometimes depending on the job. So it doesn't necessarily take millennials and keep them at a job longer, but it does have them looking for the job that's going to be a good fit for the person that they are and the amount of money that they might owe or the lifestyle that they have. That's a great question. I wish I could answer it better, but the bottom line is millennials knew it going in, just like anyone else did, and now these debts are there, and it's tough for everyone, and it has been tough. The difference is there's more loans and more millennials, so it's a bigger issue than it ever was before, and it's not easy. There's folks that take a number of years to pay that back. I hope it changes. Open to new ideas and thinking outside the box. Millennials are great, and I just wanted to point those out. Those are on your sheet, but open to new ideas. If you give them a new idea or if you let them come up with an idea and pitch it to you, there's a good chance that that's going to be another reason that they stay. And they think outside the box. Of course, millennials are social, they're confident, and they should be because they, basically were raised in a pretty good era, and they're fast learners, very fast learners. Any other questions on millennials? Yes?
I think one thing that has to be made kind of clear is you have to allow them to think outside the box.
Absolutely.
I've been not so much in positions, but I think it's important.
If the boss is another generation, that when they start throwing ideas, don't automatically knock them.
That's a great point, and it's starting to happen already. What she said is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you're a millennial and you have ideas, you want to be open to listening to them. And there are a lot of management that is, and a lot that aren't. The ones that aren't, you're going to lose them. You are going to lose them because what they've got to say may not be the right message at the right time that you want to act on, but they still want to be heard because they were heard at home and they expect the same treatment at work. Really what's gone on is it used to be this sort of relationship with the manager or the boss and the employee, and now it's right here. It's right here. Obviously, the manager's a little bit higher, but he or she needs to listen closely because they want to share things. They want to talk. They want to get their point across. Yeah, I think we'll move on. Thank you, by the way. That was great. Some of the things that millennials do that you may not know that they do, but they do, is they like to work standing up. They like to move around. Some of them sit on a couch, on a bed. Now, here's a big deal. All right, just one time I get to use this guy, right? See that listening to music thing? 5 and 10 years ago, that was a no-no. Dumb. Because they were afraid that productivity would go down. They weren't thinking. Millennials studied listening to music. Millennials have music on a lot, depending on who they are. They're used to that. So what happened is huge, giant companies, names we know, started changing their culture at work. Not just how they treated their employees, but what their employees needed. And they realized that with this generation, so it went for all others, you're going to be at your desk or in your office, and you got your earbuds in, and you're listening to something, go for it. As long as your productivity's there, we don't care. Before that, it was like, You could get a write-up, you could get in trouble, you could get this and that. So when you see this, if you see it happening and you're managing them, if you want to mention something once, you can, but they're listening to tunes because that's how they zone out the rest of the world and stay focused. Millennials are sick and tired of not being taken seriously. Now, I'm not saying they need to be coddled because they don't. But as was mentioned before, they want to know that you understand that they have a voice, they have thoughts, and they'd like to share them with you. Don't be professorial. I mentioned that before. If you're talking to somebody about nutrition, or if you have an employee, if you're professorial and they're younger and they're millennials, you're going to lose them. You got to put a little bit of humor in there, a little bit of humanity in there, because that's what they relate to. That's much more important. They need funny, plus the big picture. What do I mean by the big picture? Millennials want to feel like they're making a difference. As a matter of fact, the company that they join, getting into nutrition or whatever it is they decide to do, they're doing maybe because they want a paycheck, but oftentimes they're looking to make a difference. And in order to make a difference, they need to understand the big picture. And the big picture used to be closed. Oh, that can only be for higher ups. Not anymore. The more information you can give them, the more you can tell them about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and where we're heading, the more they're going to be in the game. The more they're going to want to be part of the team. I see heads nodding, so I think that's right. But I've talked to enough millennials. They taught me. Open and friendly environment, kind of like it is outside of work, maybe at home. Open and friendly, less rigid, absolutely about the job, absolutely about nutrition, absolutely about taking care of people and making better choices, healthier choices, but being open and friendly. By the way, sometimes we don't do enough of this in general. Talking to millennials about family and friends and hobbies is very important because that's their life. It ain't the job. And that's great. This is what it's all about to them. And you need to also understand that millennials' parents are very much still a part of their life when it comes to work. A lot of millennials will talk to their parents about what's going on at work and bounce stuff off of them to see what they think. So they're very engaged with people that they trust in their opinions. They're very well informed. They're passionate about politics. They're passionate about many other things. If you sit down and talk to a millennial for a while, get ready, because they'll unload, and they'll unload some very, very passionate, great stuff, and they'll do it for a long time. You know, sometimes I still talk to audiences, and they're convinced that millennials are little kids. They're the opposite. Technology, as we know, is extremely important. Don't take that away. That's why companies realized, you want your earbuds in, you want your Beats on your ears, go for it. Just get your job done. Real important. If you take nothing else away from this slide besides be likable, please the last one. They want positive news before negative news. Give them the good stuff. And then, by the way, anybody ever heard of Toastmasters? It's a group where you can go if you want to learn to speak a little bit better and not say so many ands, so's, and get comfortable speaking in front of people. Like you and I, right? Exactly. One of the things Toastmasters does when they're evaluating people, and you're speaking in front of your Toastmaster peers, is they tell you a couple of things that you did that were really well done when you spoke. And then one thing that you probably need to work on a little bit to make the presentation better. Think of Toastmasters when you're talking to millennials. Let them know what's rocking. Let them know what they're doing that really matters and why it's so good. And if there's something you need to tweak or you want them to do a little better, then add that. Any thoughts? Yes.
I do have one. About the project, a lot of times, like our directors, they have things going on.
Mm-hmm.
It appears on your desk and you're supposed to magically do things.
Yes.
So,
And there's no priority given to it except do that now.
exactly. If you involve for those who are in upper management, if you involve us or just kind of shoot us an email telling us what projects are in the works, it's easier for us to wrap our heads around it, and then that way, when it comes to our desk, we understand what it is. Because a lot of times we get the end product, and they're like, go ahead and do it. And I'm like, what is this? Where did it come from?
Right, what's it about? And remember, we mentioned, excellent point, thank you. Big picture. If there's stuff going on, let them know. And if you're going to shoot stuff onto people's desk or shoot them an email, let them know why. It used to just be, here it is, get it done. And then there's also, we talked before, and I saw people's heads nodding when I said that we're doing, one person's doing the job of what two used to do, sometimes three. Sometimes it comes down to prioritizing. So this isn't just a millennial thing. When you're working with somebody and they keep on throwing things at you and they want you to do more, one of the best things you can do to make it easy on you and put it right back on them is go, look, I understand you want this, and I'll get this done right now. But if I get this done, I'm going to have to wait to do this and this. What would you like me to do? And then just be quiet for a second. Because they're, oh, you know what, I didn't really need that done till now. Oh, well, why didn't you tell me that? But it was a priority a second ago. So they're throwing all this stuff, then you're getting nervous. I have to have it done. I have to put this in that. No, you don't. So the communication is extremely important. You're right, and being part of that, letting people know just a little bit more helps. So I have a 28-year career in corporate America, and I had teams and wonderful teams, great people. One of the things I was known for was communicating well and having shorter meetings because A, my attention span wasn't that huge, and second of all, I just wanted it to be fun, get the points across, talk, and get anything out that we needed to do, and then move on. And we would communicate on things, and our sessions, our meetings would be more open, and I found that when I did that, things just flowed better. There were less questions, and people could get things done, so another great point. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Question. So, to what extent do you think that it's important to tailor the work environment to, say, these characteristics that describe who these generations are versus encouraging them to think outside the box or breaking?
Tailoring the work environment has to affect everyone. So it's the same rules for everyone. We understand that. What it really comes down to is, and I mentioned it before, we'll talk about it a moment now too, is communication. When you're either hiring somebody or you have that time to sit down with them, it's very important today to ask, how are we doing for you? How are we doing for you? And that's not just a question for boomers or for the silent vets, the silent generation, the vets, or for Xers and millennials. It's for everyone. Today's manager understands that things are busy, but once in a while you got to check in and go, how are we doing for you? Is there something you really need? And then you need to listen. Because you're not tailor-making it for every single individual, but once in a while they're going to come up with a nugget that you had no idea was needed. So it's not so much one thing for millennials and another thing for Xers, but you're still talking to the different generations to find out. Does that help at all? Yeah.
Cindy brought up a point earlier
Mm-hmm.
about, encouraging the students to, for your clients to put down their phones and actually talk to her face to face. Millennial thing to do. So I was kind of just probing to what extent do we do things like that to break the mold versus.
Are you talking about in a meeting, in an interview? What particular setting is it?
I guess I was just thinking in general.
I'm not sure what's going to happen, and I'll throw it back to millennials on this one. But there is an issue that Xers and boomers have with when something's going down. Like right now, I'm talking, and if you guys are on your phone, I'm totally cool with that because you're busy, you're away from work, and I get that. Totally. But if you're having like an interview, obviously, your phone should be like on off. If you're in a meeting, you probably don't want to be checking email. Is that wrong or is that right? What do you think when back? Yeah? I mean, you kind of want to, but at the same time, and if it's a long meeting, well, of course you're going to check it, or you're going to go out and take a potty break for 15 minutes, right? But it really depends on the situation, and it depends more on anything else than your manager. If your manager's cool enough, if your manager gets it, they're going to be fine with it. They're going to understand. And they're going to, again, go, well, productivity is there. This person rocks. So if they're doing a little this or that, they know what they're doing. It's changing, though. It's going to be more and more flexible in the next 3, 5, and 10 years. And boy, is that going to hurt boomers. Some boomers who don't get it, it's going to be really tough on them. The boomers that get it and the extras that get it, no problem. Yes?
One of the things that we always provide is family meals throughout the generations.
Well, which part of it? I mean, the millennials, as far as having them actually sit down with the family and eat? We were talking about that earlier today, and I said one of the things we did at our house, and we still do, we talk, and my house was very open. Sometimes our kids would give us a lot more information than we wanted, but it's better than the opposite way. We stood up to eat. We didn't sit at a table. Sometimes we would sit down if it was a longer meal. Other times we'd stand around this island. There'd be a bunch of food. We'd eat. We'd talk. Everybody was there. And sometimes if there were things going on, like an activity or whatever, that couldn't happen. But we let them know that we only want 10 minutes, maybe 15, and then you're gone. Especially today, millennials don't want to sit around talking to you forever. They've got stuff to do. They want to eat, maybe on your time, maybe on the some people are going to go, well, you're going to eat when the food's here or not. Well, they'll find food somewhere. So, it's out there. So the challenge is kind of balancing it. How do you get people to sit down and eat for a long time? If there's a special function, they're going to do it. Or if they're convinced since growing up when they were little that, Sunday is when we have a meal together, maybe they'll do it. But you have to kind of ask them, what can we do to have you hang out with us for a little while? And it's going to be different. So it's not going to just be every single millennial is going to say, I want this, I need this. But I have found shorter meals, good meals, nutritious meals, and standing up instead of sitting down sometimes makes a difference. But you have to still talk to the people individually and find out what they want. Because parents know their kids, and millennials know what they want. Now, millennials, too, how many of them are still at home eating? Some are back at home. Some never left home. But, does that help at all? Anybody have any other thoughts for her? Yeah. Look, are we talking about nutrition or are we talking about communication and watching TV and electronics? Because that's really two different conversations. So, 2 days ago, I'm walking my dog. 2 days ago, I'm walking my dog, and I see this dad walking his dog on his cell phone with a stroller. And I'm thinking to myself, do you realize what an incredible moment this is? Now, I didn't say anything. You've got this beautiful little angel in the stroller. You've got this dog whose tail's going boom, 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 and I've got my dog Eddie. And I was going to kind of engage and have some fun, but I was like, well, he's busy, he's on his phone, so it kind of kept me away. I don't really know, quite honestly, what you would tell a young millennial with kids. You can tell them one time, it's probably better to just talk and not have the TV on and to take the phone and just put it over there. Is that going to work? Most likely not. Does it hurt to say it one time? No. But is there a magic wand that you can put over them to get them to do that? No. Sorry. Yes?
One thing that I recommend when I have clients is
yes.
you may not get them to sit down at a meal.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to happen. But having the kids in the kitchen cooking with them might be the opportunity.
That's great.
They might actually go to their own room, but if they're in the kitchen, even if they're doing homework or doing stuff while the parents are cooking or engaging them while they're cooking, you'll get them more, have the opportunity to want to eat with before they're involved, even if it's just stirring something.
Right, getting a spice. No, 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 not that one. Right, and that's a great point.
If they're smelling and they're seeing what their parents are doing, maybe they'll be more apt to eat the food that's nutritious. They're not always.
That one's not easy. Anybody else have any ideas? Yes. I'm back.
Have meal because especially a lot of clients that we have, it's not their first priority. It's did the kids even eat, not what they're eating. Do I have time? Do I not have
Do you have
time?
food?
Are you running to a soccer game or something else, or do you have a second job? Or so I think it's just kind of refocusing priorities, and that it does affect you long term and not just in that moment.
And-
You don't think about nutrition.
I agree, and correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think it's millennials are the generation that raised kids while a parent was cooking. I think it was Xers and Boomers too, right? We did a lot of that. Yes.
I was going to say, I see it a lot of young millennial mothers,
Mm-hmm.
and we're trying to get them to understand the importance of feeding their child. That giving food is like giving love,
Oh God, yeah.
and that you can't just put that phone there and be interested in your phone and put food on the tray, and you be looking at your food while you let your child eat on their own. You know, if you're a multitasker, then learn how to feed your baby and look at the phone. But you have to do some feeding. I mean, I go to places and I see young mothers, they're so interested in their. They put food on the tray for the baby, but they're not really engaged in any of that.
You know, it
giving
is.
any skills.
It is an addiction too, right? I mean, in the nicest way. But these phones that we have and everything we do, you talked about it before. We're going to use them again in a moment. So have your. By the way, if you would get your cell phones out, we're going to do something fun for a moment. Speaking of phones, it's one of those things that you have to talk to people and hope. But when you're a millennial and you're a parent, you were raised with a phone almost in your hand, so it's hard to get that out. You can mention it to them. It may click with some, with others it won't. Millennials love to win. Millennials, like any other generation, don't like to lose either. So if you're having issues with some millennials, just ask them that question. Do you like to win? And in a lot of instances, it's going to be, yeah, okay. Well, here's what we're going to do to win. Here's what we're going to do to make things better for people and so forth, and nutrition-wise. Coaching them, helping them is great. Communication with millennials goes both ways. They do not like anybody, we don't like to be dictated to and said this is, they want to be able to communicate, just like they do with their family and friends. They want to have they understand if you are their manager, that you are the manager. But that doesn't really matter to them. They still want to be able to communicate directly with you and not be fearful of, getting in trouble. Be motivational. Be educational. Be a mentor. And we're going to get into that in a moment too, reverse mentoring programs and why those are important. And be specific with directions. Millennials, if you're talking to a millennial and you want to let them know something, you just mentioned it too. You get a new task or something. Well, what's this all about? They weren't specific with the directions. Here it is. This is what it's about. This is when we need it. And if there's any flexibility with them, let them know. These are very, very important to this generation. And as I said before, you're taking notes. That's great. I will have all the slides available. We'll connect later if you want. Just let me know. I'll send them to you. Generation Z. Real quick, I want you to know about these folks because the oldest is 20. So these are guys and gals that are in college now. Maybe a couple smart ones even finished. They're working. They're helping. They're in the workforce, and they're extremely important because right now they're 1% to 2%, but they're a large population, and they're going to become more and more important. So right now, you don't hear them much, you don't see them much, but they're growing every year, and there's going to be a ton more of them. They're convinced that it's brutal out there. They were raised during 9/11. They were raised during 2007 and 8 when things were really tough, and they've seen that it's a jungle, and they're kind of concerned. They want to succeed. They very much want to succeed, but they're a little bit cautious. They want to run their own company. They want to do their own thing, just like millennials. I love that about millennials and Gen Z, that they don't just necessarily want to work for a company. They want to do their own thing. That's great. This one is not mine. I want you to know I borrowed this next one from a book I read. If you think of the silent generation and the vets and Generation Z, that's what Generation Z is all about. So it's this new high infotech, passionate young generation that also has some of the same characteristics if you look on your sheet as Generation Z, as silent vets. How do they communicate? We know. Smartphone. This one, real important. Networking is power to them. It's not necessarily their qualifications, it's who they know. These folks are incredibly well connected, and who they know is a lot of knowledge and a lot of power to them over their qualifications. There's their ages and a couple of things that went on during their lives. And Snapchat, Whisper Less, Facebook, and they're independent and in a rush. Try to hold down. Try to find. You get one that's like 16 years old today. Forget it. They're gone. It's like they're history. That one speaks for itself. This is for every one of us that has anything to do with communicating with employees, wanting better productivity, or communicating with folks that you want to help. Just imagine that, how much more productive they are when they're a little happier. What makes different generations happier? It's on your sheet, their needs, wants, and desires. Mentoring programs. Does anybody at their work have any mentoring programs? Okay, there's a couple. These are extremely important. One of the things you mentioned, and everyone always does, is why do people leave? Well, one of the reasons is mentoring programs aren't available. This is incredibly important to millennials. It's really important to Xers too, but what it does is it allows people to rise up, to learn more, and it also allows some people who may be getting ready to exit soon to leave a legacy. And reverse mentoring works really well too. So you can have a millennial take a boomer or a vet and help them with technology, help them with other things. So there's a lot of ways that mentoring and reverse mentoring helps. And almost half of millennials said that their management doesn't understand why they like to use electronics so much. If they don't understand, they're behind the game. 5 times more likely to be promoted. If you want people to stay, and I can help, I can show you the way, but for right now, mentoring programs, they work big time at large companies, at small companies. If you wouldn't mind pulling out your cell phones for a moment and go to your web browser. I put together some documents especially for you that I want to give to you. If you would go to Kiwi Live, www.kiwilive.com. We've got a little time left. Anybody getting through? Yeah, it's going through. And the keyword's inspire. We will connect, and you will instantly get some documents sent to your email. Little extra stuff. How am I doing, Cody? Okay, cool. Got the thumbs up. Are you able to get through? Cool. www.kiwilive.com. Now, we're going to connect, and like I said, there's some documents I want to leave you with. A couple of other things, inspire and help you out. Back to mentoring for a moment, because this seems to be something crucial for a lot of companies and a lot of people. We're going to just talk about it real quick, and then I'm going to get into, we're going to finish up with how to connect everyone. You can see here, I don't need to read. People who are mentored feel appreciated. They perform better. They feel understood. And they tend to stay at companies longer. Productivity increases, as does retention. When you can climb the ladder, you can learn more. And again, you can email me if you need any of these slides or you want them all. I'll send them to you. I'm happy to do that. The more questions we ask, the more mingling we do with each other at work and with our clients, with people, the more you learn. And not every Gen Xer is the same. Millennial, boomers, we're all different. The best way for you to have an edge over others that are nutritionists when it comes to blending the generations is taking each individual and finding out what they want. If you treat everybody the same, it was almost like when we were in school. We can't treat our teachers the same. Everybody was different. That's how it is with the people we take care of. The way we communicate with them, ask. How can I get you to do? Ask. Now, if it's with employees, you don't always have to ask, but that listening to one another is extremely important, and every generation wants that. Couple of things to remember that happens because of you. I mean, it's incredible. When I was doing research and then I was talking with Rose and some of the other people at PANEN, they were sharing with me the differences that they've made over 20 years and where things were and where they are now. You literally, I think you save lives. And I'm convinced that people eat much better. That's a given. If you weren't here, it'd be a lot tougher on families. Healthier decisions are made too. If people don't know about gluten, if people don't understand about trans fats and about other things, or reminding them about fruits and vegetables, they're not going to eat as healthy. You make that happen. Educational programs and cooking. You mentioned the simple thing of having the kids in the room, helping cook a little bit. That's very helpful. Food safety, huge. Obviously, a lot of young mothers and fathers may not know that, may not remember that. Some people who aren't so young may not remember that. Good health, that's easy to promote. That's something you do all the time. And break up unhealthy routines. It's funny, but sometimes when you're sitting there, if you have popcorn without butter on it, or if you have some carrots instead of chips, little things like that when you're watching a Friday night movie with the kids, it's not easy, but if you remind them, there are people who are going to do that. There are parents that are going to do that. In the end, it's really about why you got into the nutrition field. And as I said in the beginning, I don't think it's because you're going to make $150,000 a year necessarily, but more so because you care about people, you care about nutrition, and you want folks to eat healthier. And you're obviously walking the walk. So I just want to let you know that you make a difference. You make a huge difference. And you have in my life too. Like I said, my cousin June has done what you're doing, both in Boston for low-income families and for me for 30 years, bugging Scotty to eat healthier, and it finally stuck. So it's because of her and her not giving up that I was able to kind of focus more on eating better, not quite as many bagels and all that other stuff that I love so much. I didn't even realize a bagel was bad. But now I know, because of June. You make a huge difference, and I want to thank you very much. In a little while, we're going to have wine tasting and other fine things. But before that, I wrote a book. Has nothing to do with what I'm talking about today, but it's a pretty cool read. And I want to give it to somebody whose birthday is the closest to May 2nd. So whose birthday is the closest to May 2nd? The 8th? The 8th is good. However, I'm not convinced that you're the closest yet. Anybody closer to May 8th? Anybody? Nobody? Anybody? All right, guess what? Congratulations. Enjoy. It's kind of a neat read. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everything. I'll be around tonight if you have any questions. Congratulations on the book, and thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it. You guys are great.